Prospector News is media for educational purposes only and should not be construed as advice. We are not a certified financial analyst, licensed broker, or fund dealer, exempt market dealer, or hold a license to provide financial advice. We provide no legal opinion regarding accounting, tax, or law issues. Nothing in this podcast should be construed as investment advice or the solicitation to buy or sell stocks or commodities. All opinions expressed are those of the participants and should not be relied upon when making investment decisions. Those decisions should be made with the advice of a personal financial advisor. If you have enjoyed our podcast, please hit the like and share buttons and be sure to hit subscribe. I'm Michael Fox, and this is a Prospector News podcast. And I have rejoining me again today, Ross Orr, the president and CEO of Bactech Environmental. And here we're going to talk about the upcoming Sudbury project. Good morning, Ross.
Morning, Michael. How are you?
I am doing good. For those who didn't see our previous podcast, perhaps let's give them the overview of the company again.
Okay, so we're a company that has a long history in bioleaching or biooxidation, depending on which form you want to use, which is the use of naturally occurring bacteria to replace smelting / roasting in the mineral processing side. So we're an ESG company, we're environmental, and we produce, or what we target tends to be high grade arsenic gold concentrates, because we produce a benign form of arsenic as a byproduct of the process.
Perfect. Now the company has expanded and is looking to do something very unique. You have a new patented pending process that will remove the nickel out of Pyrrhotite Concentrate. And you've got a pilot project in the Sudbury region to prove this.
Yes, well, we're just getting going on it now. Nadia Mikachik, Dr. Nadia Mikachik from Sudbury is sort of overseeing this. She's developing her own mineral processing center in Sudbury. At least that's what she's striving to do. And one of the legs of the stool will be bioleaching. So right now, she's just putting the finishing touches on a pilot plant that will be used to look at ways of bioleaching pyrrhotite. And pyrrhotite is a sulfide mineral that was mined alongside pentlandite. And pentlandite has much, much higher values of nickel. And pyrrhotite, because of its lower grade and abundance of iron, was always deemed to be sort of a problematic sulfide. And it was separated away from the pentlandite at the time and literally dumped into the lakes. The stuff's very volatile. I mean, it'll burst into flames on its own, sitting out in tailings. And so that's why it has to go underwater so that it can't oxidize. The estimates are anywhere between 75 and 100 million tons of this material, but it's low grade. It's 0.8% nickel. It's has a very low cobalt number as well. But the whole idea here is that there are more pieces to the puzzle, or the sum of the parts is more than the whole. So we want to look at breaking down this pyrrhotite and doing something with all the different pieces that we sort of liberate into the process.
So it's going to break it down into nickel, cobalt, and I believe iron is in there as well, is it not?
Well, there's actually 4 centers. There's iron, which would be reconstituted hopefully into a form where you could sell this to the steel industry, as a replacement maybe for iron ore. There's elemental sulfur that can be precipitated out and sold. Just I think sulfur is $90 a ton or something. There is after the bioleaching process, you're going to have a nickel cobalt sulfate that'll precipitate out, that'll be sold. And at the back end of it, you've got this 50% of the mass, which is left over after the bioleaching, that we hope to look for ways of creating geopolymers. So it would go into things like bricks or roads or whatever. And again, selling or adding up all the pieces of the puzzle give you hopefully a profitable process for this material.
Wonderful. And when will this plant be ready to go and be up and running?
Well, I think, like everybody talks about COVID and supply disruptions. Well, we're not immune to that. So there's, I spoke to her last week. She was just waiting on some cooling baffles for the tanks, because the bacteria generate heat, and we have to sort of keep them sort of under control, or else they'll blow themselves up at 80 Celsius. So I would say that we're very, very close. We've secured material for the process. We have to go back and file a final process, a patent process by next April. So, we've got to get going, because the pilot will probably run 6 months or so. And then we'll have to obviously study the results and detail the final application for the patent as well.
Now, there's a big benefit to the Glencores and the Comincos of the area that are paying, to have this material stored, correct?
Yeah, it's Vale, actually. They're the largest. They took over Inco.
Okay.
They would probably own 75% of the material, and Glencore would own the balance. There aren't too many other people that hold any of this material or have environmental bonds posted to cover any future problems that may exist. We're just taking the adage that we're going to build it, and hopefully we can all sit down together at the end of the day and figure out a way to make money, because that's really what it's about at the end of the day, as well as the environmental cleanup.
Oh, absolutely. If you can't do it in a financially beneficial way, there's no point in doing it. Now, where else in the world, other than the Sudbury area, do these tailings exist, and what is the potential for this if it's proven successful?
Well, it's funny, you should mention that, because about 1999, Paul Miller, who's our head of our BioLeach, actually did about a 6-month pilot project at Radio Hill, which is a nickel pyrrhotite deposit in Australia. And basically they got the bioleaching to work. They got everything into solution, but in those days, and we're talking 23 years ago, the technology to cheaply get metal out of solution did not exist. Well, today, now with membranes and other precipitates that we can figure out, it makes sense to go back and do this again. And of course, the prices of all the various metals are a lot higher than they were back in 1999 as well. So we do have a precedent there on the bioleaching side. We're engaging some outside brains, so to speak, to look at the geopolymer side, to see what it's going to look like when it comes out of the bioleaching and what can be done with it. So that's, that's, as an example, that's a deposit that's been, I'm not sure if it's a mine or not, but it's in Australia. So it's around, but again, it doesn't tend to be very high grade, unlike the pentlandite, which is, tends to run 3-4% nickel.
I see. So going forward, what the next step is, you prove the patent and then you apply to have that patent extended. Is that correct? Or am I, or I'm missing a step there? So
we file a preliminary patent, which allows people to challenge it if they feel that, it's already existing, or it's prior knowledge. So far, I don't think anything's popped up, but we could be wrong. But the reality is that, each of those stages of what we're doing are individual stages on their own. They're their own sort of mini profit centers. So, the fact that we're going to try and reconstitute iron into a form, I don't think that exists out there right now. Anyways, it's a process that as you move towards the goal line, somebody can come up and challenge you. Maybe that's somebody you sit down and talk about something jointly with them at the same time. There's other people out there working on this particular type of sulfide, but they tend to be working on certain, like just one piece of the puzzle. We're looking at the A to Z answer to the puzzle. Like I said, using all the parts to hopefully make that worth more than the whole.
So would the timeline be to commercialization of the whole process?
Well, I would think that once you get to once you've done the piloting, and somebody who has much deeper pockets says to you, look, we're interested in what you're doing. The next stage, of course, would be probably a demonstration plant, something that would be in the order of magnitude of maybe 10 to $15 million. That really can only be afforded by people that have much deeper pockets than Bactech does. Once you get through that stage, then of course you could scale it up. But you've also got to look at the total volumes as well. You know, we're talking about processing. Even if you did 1,000 tons a day, you're probably there for 30 years. And you know, how big of a bioleach plant do we want to make at the end of the day? So we look at it from the point of view that we'll start cannibalizing these lakes and bringing them back one by one. And because the technology is modular, though, you know, could you have a 10,000 ton a day plant? Yeah, maybe. You know, I mean, we don't really know. It all has to do with outside factors like the price of nickel at the time, the price of cobalt, you know, whether the iron ore can be reconstituted. You know, it's early days, Mike, and I'll be the first to admit it, but it's also very exciting because that is one heck of a resource. If you do the math, even at $10 nickel, I think you've got about $20 billion worth of nickel sitting in there.
Yeah, I remember when we were chatting in Chicago, we were doing the back of the napkin calculations, and we kept going back because we kept finding math mistakes, and the number kept getting bigger.
Yeah, those damn decimal points.
Yeah. Oh, I'm notorious for slipping decimals. Now, you've also got the plant project in Ecuador for the gold mineralization. You just signed a number of agreements there, and you got a tax break from the Ecuadorian government. Are we still on pace for a commissioning and a launch in the first quarter of next year?
Yeah, I mean, really, that's what Bactech's all about right now. I mean, this patent application for what we're doing in Sudbury is nice, but the thing that puts bread on the table, of course, is going to be the fact that we're going to build a plant that is going to treat very, very high arsenic gold concentrates that right now are being stolen, I guess, by the Chinese. They're effectively paying as little as 50 cents on the dollar because of the arsenic levels. And people don't realize there was a tax imposed last fall by the Chinese government on high arsenic gold concentrates coming into the country, much like they did with copper, 6-7 years ago. So they've just passed it on to the poor miner who's really not getting any value for his material. Yes, we're on target for our permitting. The government has committed to 8 months, which would take us to September. We're always working, of course, on the financing side because we have to raise 12 to 13 million US for the capital side, for the capex. Somebody just asked me this morning by email, when are you going to get your financing done? I say, well, how long is a piece of string? You can't make people give you money, but at the same time, you keep setting the table to say, look, this is what we're doing, and it's all very good. And the interest has been very strong. I have to admit, people are very, very intrigued by what we're doing. And the first one's always the toughest, right? I mean, it's like a domino. Once you hit that first one over, I can think of 4 projects already that come to mind that we could start pursuing. I spent a lot of time at PDAC talking to the likes of people from Sudbury and Timmins, because Canada needs a bioleach plant. There's a lot of arsenal pyrite that tend to be in smaller deposits, but they have a hard time finding a home for their product. And I think of Go West Resources. They've got the Franklin mine, I think they call it the Bradshaw mine now. And that's Chinese owned, and they're probably getting very, very weak pricing as well from China, because I'm sure that's where their concentrates are going to go.
Yeah, definitely. And it's a win-win for everybody. Less arsenic is always a good thing.
Yeah. And it just happens that we produce this ferric arsenate as a byproduct. I mean, the penny dropped about 10 years ago. We said, why aren't we chasing all the stuff that nobody else wants? You have the market to yourself, basically. And we're starting to hear, we're getting calls from metal traders who are looking around the world for places, looking for homes for the product that they're buying in South America or, in Canada. There just aren't a lot of places out there that have the capability to process high arsenic levels without blending it. And if they're going to blend it, you can bet the miner's not going to get paid a lot of money for it.
No, it's those costs get dumped down on the little guy, that's for sure. So these are exciting times on both fronts, and this company's moving forward kind of a bit in a vacuum at the moment with the way the markets are. But I'm sure when the markets turn, all of a sudden everyone's going to go, oh, wait, look at this. And that'll help the financing program going forward.
Yeah, it's all about permitting and financing. Those are the two big bugaboos that always come up all the time. You know, a financing can always be done. It's at what price level do you want to do it at?
Yeah.
How much pain are you willing to withstand to, you know, to do it? And you know, the fact that everybody keeps pitching deals at us that we just don't find acceptable right now, I think is, you know, pays a tribute to that fact that they're intrigued by what we're doing. Our biggest problem is that we don't have a deposit, you know, or else this would be a royalty or a streaming deal right away. But if there's no asset that we can pledge outside of the land and the plant, which, you know, as one guy said to me once, what am I going to do with a bioleach plant? And I said, well, that's a good point. He said, if you can't make it work, how am I going to make it work?
As we go forward, we're going to keep talking and be exciting to see how everything progresses.
Yep, you bet. Great talking.
Thanks for joining me.
You bet. Cheers.
Bactech Environmental is a paid sponsor of the Prospector News. The host owns shares, warrants, and royalties in Bactech Environmental, purchased at the market for investment purposes.